This is The Top, where I interview entrepreneurs who are number one or number two in their industry in terms of revenue or customer base. You'll learn how much revenue they're making, what their marketing funnel looks like, and how many customers they have.
I'm now at $20,000 per top.
5 and 6 million.
He is hell-bent on global domination.
We just broke our 100,000 units sold mark.
And I'm your host, Nathan Latka.
This is a new episode 697. Coming up tomorrow morning, we talk from Sam Ouchie. He took his sales training tool from $600,000 in yearly revenue to $1.2 million just a year later. So how did he do it on a training program?
Good morning, everybody. Nathan Latka here. My guest this morning is Scot Wingo. He is the CEO of Spiffy. He's also a four-time serial entrepreneur and industry thought leader in the e-commerce and on-demand economy realms. He's appeared on CNBC, The Today Show, and contributed to his expertise to the Wall Street Journals, New York Times, along with many other publications. He previously founded Stingray Software, which was sold to Rogue Wave Software, AuctionRover, that eventually sold to Goto and Overture and ChannelAdvisor, which went public, as you guys know, in 2013 under the stock symbol ECOM. Scot, are you ready to take us to the top?
I am. Thanks for having me on today, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So kick us off first thing. What does Spiffy do and what's your revenue model? How do you make money?
Yeah, so we're an on-demand car wash and detail company. So the way we make money is our customers pay for car washes, and we're a full stack model. So unlike a lot of the on-demand economy where they're just kind of a marketplace or they're working a network of 1099 contractors, we actually own and operate the whole soup to nuts. So we employ the technicians, we own the assets, the vans that are utilized, and that's how we make money.
And is this, so do people pay a kind of an upfront fee or is it a pay-as-you-go model?
It's pay as you go. We are one of our top requests is people kind of say, hey, having my car clean is addicting and I want to have it more often. So one of the requests we get is subscriptions. So we are working on that model. But right now you order a service and then you pay after the service is completed.
Tie me into the psychology there when somebody tells you getting a car wash is addicting. When I hear that, I hear, okay, money. How do we make more money from this addiction?
I hear the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things that it's like the sixth or seventh thing on your task list and you never get to it. So then once you're able to get to it in a frictionless way, you're like, wow, I really enjoy having my car clean. We hear from people, it really improves their mood and their attitude. And especially if they have kids and that kind of thing, it can be a very dramatic impact on your day-to-day life because we spend a lot of time in our cars. So I think that's what's addicting is that, you get really used to having your car kind of pretty nice and clean, and they really want to get it done more regularly.
And what year did you found the company in?
We started in 2014.
Okay. And so I want to obviously go through kind of more of the Spiffy story, how you started things like that. But first, you had a lot of success, it sounds like, before 2014. So give us some context first in terms of where you were in life. How old were you in 2014?
So let's see, in 2014, I was 46.
Okay.
And had successfully taken ChannelAdvisor public. And, I really loved that process of building a company up to $100 million. It's a software company, so kind of different than what I'm doing now. Going public's fun. Being CEO of a public, larger company, I just felt like I wasn't scratching that entrepreneurial itch. So started doing some testing that turned into Spiffy, and that coincided nicely with me transitioning out of ChannelAdvisor on a day-to-day basis. I still am exec chairman, so I run board meetings and have a fair amount of input, but it's not my day-to-day gig.
Mm-hmm. And what did you walk us through kind of how you got involved with ChannelAdvisor, the backstory there?
Yeah, so in 2001, so I guess in 99, we had started a company called AuctionRover and sold it to Goto.com. They invented paid search. Google made all the money, but Goto kind of invented it. We always, AuctionRover was a search engine for auction sites, and we always had plans to develop software for sellers on auction sites. So after we got acquired, we developed that software, and what turned into ChannelAdvisor is one day I was looking at who was using our software, and Sun Microsystems was our biggest seller. So we said, wow, that's amazing. And they had sold like $3 million worth of servers on eBay. This is when eBay was largely Beanie Babies. Mm-hmm. So we said, this is pretty interesting. The Goto guys said, sure, but there's this company, Google, we're getting ready to compete with. We're just going to shut you guys down. And we said, instead of that, what if management bought back this idea and spun out? So we spun out in 2001 with this idea of helping large brands and retailers sell primarily on eBay, but we felt like there'd be other channels. So we chose the name ChannelAdvisor for that reason.
Well, where did Overture fit into this picture?
Yeah, so Goto changed their name to Overture. So
same company. Okay, got it. So Goto was Overture.
They got in some dispute with Disney. Disney had Go, if you remember back then.
Yes.
So there was some dispute, and they had to change their name to Overture.
Okay, so I would be remiss not to ask some questions about how all this works, because it's rare you get someone that sold a company to a larger company and then figure out a way to strategically negotiate their way and actually buy their baby back, right? And then, take it big and take it public. So at AuctionRover, remind me again, sorry, what year was that?
So 99, we started AuctionRover, and we sold it to Goto in 2000.
Okay, 2000. Oh wow, that was really fast. Did you raise a bunch of capital on AuctionRover, or why so quick?
We did. We raised $3 million, and it was during the internet bubble. And I'm kind of a traditionalist. I believe in profits and those kinds of crazy things. And
crazy.
We started to get these acquisition offers, and they started to get higher and higher. And finally, I was like,
wait, Scott, you got to give us context there. What's high?
50 to 100 million, and we had no revenue.
Wow.
So I was kind of like, this would be remiss to say no and then have the bottom fall out from this thing and always say, wow, what if we had sold this 6-month-old company with no revenue for a pretty good sum? So eventually one of the acquirers was one, and I was a huge fan of Goto.com and the paid search model they invented. And so it made a lot of sense for us to sell to them. So that's really why it made sense. So we sold it kind of, literally 3 months before the bottom fell out of the .com bubble.
And had you already experienced a kind of a life-changing financial event with Stingray to Rogue, or was the Stingray to Rogue deal like not that big, and really AuctionRover one is where it was really life-changing for you and your family?
Yeah, I would say the Stingray to Rogue wave was it put me in a position where I didn't have to work. So then I was kind of playing with the house's money, so I could make take a lot more risk than I could in my first endeavor.
Yes, Scott, I have to pull this lesson out real quick, because so many people say only focus on one thing, or they read a Steve Jobs bio or Elon Musk bio and say, I want to go to space tomorrow. And the fact is, nobody realizes Elon started with an agency that he sold, and momentum just created where he is today. It sounds like you did the same thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with creating a win so that you've got Maslow's hierarchy needs taken care of and then some, and then you're basically playing on house money. You take bigger risks. Did you feel that as you were doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at Stingray, my first company, I always joked because I had personal, I had to sign everything personal debt, and I had like $1 million of personal liabilities for leases and all the other stuff we had, and I had like a net worth of like 50K. So, so then once you have that first success, it's the old thing, you don't. Once you don't need money is when you get it. Then it was a lot easier to find venture capital and those kinds of things.
How old were you when Stingray was founded?
I was, 25 or 26.
Okay. And then how many years did you build that before you sold it to Rogue?
About 3 years.
Okay, got it. So you were, call it 28, 29 years old to Rogue. And what was that acquisition price?
It was about $7 million.
Okay, got it. And now, did that company have revenue?
It did, yeah. So it was, we were closing in on 8 or 9 million. So it was kind of a one-time revenue type deal. Not
horrible. And was it software? How much did you take to the bottom line?
It was software. Yeah, we had, pretty good. It was installed software back in the day. So we had 20 to 30% margins. So
gross or net?
Net.
I was going to say gross. You were probably 80, 75. Server costs were probably higher back then.
Yep, correct.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Got it. So that's helpful to understand. So you get your first kind of good exit, right? $7 million. You get rid of your personal guarantees on 1 million. Your net worth is now larger than 50K. You're now going to go play on AuctionRover on house money, basically. What did you personally sink into AuctionRover before? Again, you obviously exited.
So in AuctionRover, probably 2 million.
Okay, got it. Yep. And then you raised, and then you added on additional 3 million in additional capital.
Yeah, so angeled 2 ourselves, got 3, and before we could really get into the 3, sold it for, depending on the time and how you calculate it, about 20 to 50 million bucks.
That's unbelievable to me. That just seems like fantasy land. What were people thinking back then?
It was crazy. We had a competitor that got an offer of 200 million and turned it down, and then it became a zero. So it was, I felt felt vindicated doing that. But, so we had some of the money we took was from Draper, Fisher, Jervison's arm, and they were actually upset we sold because they had just sold Hotmail for $1 billion, and they were kind of like, let's hold on for $1 billion. I'm like, are you crazy? I'm taking this money off the table. So,
and if you guys want an interesting tie in there to him, Tim Draper's take on this, who created Draper Fisher Partners, we had him on in episode 129 at nathanlatka.com/the top 129. And it's funny, Scott, you bring up Hotmail. He broke down the sent with love from Hotmail at the bottom, the growth hacking they did there, and how that exit happened. So it's interesting to hear you were on his mind during that same period.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, got it. So that exit happened, and what was the price on that?
20 to 50, call it.
Okay, got it. So yeah, and again, no revenue.
Yeah, negligible, like maybe 50K a year or something.
So you sell in 2000 to Goto. Goto renames itself Overture. They want to shut you down because they're about to compete with Google. They needed to focus. What did that conversation sound like when you're actually negotiating the terms of how to buy this thing back?
It was, I kind of liken it to Brer Rabbit. It was kind of, don't throw me in that patch. We were kind of like, we were helping them work on the cost of winding this thing down. So we were a little bit fox in the hen house there. So there was a lot of cost to wind this down with severance and those kinds of things. So we were able to say, look, we can help you avoid those costs by creating this new co, and we'll take over we'll take some of the employees and cover the cost for shutting this down. So it was essentially we sold very high and bought very low.
So what did you buy it back for? I mean, I imagine it was nowhere near the 20 to 50 million you sold it for.
Yeah, it was around $1 million all in.
That's unbelievable. And you would credit the leverage you had there really to the cost that they were going to have to incur to shut it down, related to severance and things like that.
Yeah, and the pressure of Google also helped a lot.
Yeah. Okay, got it. So you buy it back, and what year was that, by the way?
2001.
Okay, so wow, this is so quick. So you founded it in 1999. You raise almost $3 million. You put in $2 million yourself. You sell it for 20 to 50 million in 2000 to Goto. A year later, they say we're going to shut you down. We got to go after Google. You say don't put us in that briar patch. You buy it back for somewhere called around $1 million in 2001. Now, this eventually goes public in 2013. So that was new to you, right? I mean, you'd never taken a company that big before.
Yeah, that's true. It's always been my aspiration. And I remember when I was a kid, my dad was a business person and he got Fortune magazine. And I remember the Microsoft IPO, and it said, the cover had a picture of Bill Gates and it said, Microsoft's $100 million deal. And I was like, what is that? And I learned about IPOs for the first time. So I've always had it as a goal to take a company public. And, my first company, I really couldn't see how it could get over 20 or 30 million in revenue. AuctionRover was really a lottery ticket. And then with ChannelAdvisor, I said, I really want to find something that has a bigger addressable market that I can kind of ride for a longer term. And I was in a financial position to be able to do that. So that's kind of what the goal was in 01, spinning out ChannelAdvisor, was to kind of say, let's really moonshot this thing and see how big we can get it. And if we can do an IPO.
Was this because you were competitive and want to beat your father?
No, it was because, I just felt like it was, I always like to have a higher goal that I'm setting, and it, IPO is a pretty high one. There's not many companies that get public. So it was a fun goal just to have.
So that's one of the things that turned you on about it, right? It's just a goal. Very few people do it. Let's go do it. It's the epitome of entrepreneurship.
It's the Mount Everest of startups.
So some people would argue like the Mount Everest of startups would be like a very small team doing $100 million per year and putting 50 million in your personal pocket every year without having to deal with public shareholders. Why'd you decide to go public instead of going the cash route?
Yeah, if you raise venture capital, you're gonna have to have an exit, and there's two paths: M&A or IPO. And I just felt like I'd done the M&A thing a couple times and really wanted to see what the IPO process was like and understand that. And I followed a lot of other companies and listened into their conference calls and felt like that was something really interesting there and something that I may enjoy doing.
And what did you raise capital for ChannelAdvisor?
We did. So we, myself and another founder, put in about $10 million ourselves to get it going. And then this was before cloud computing. And it's a so what ChannelAdvisor does is helps retailers and brands sell on eBay, Amazon, Google, et cetera. So it's e-commerce oriented, and it's highly transactional. So there's a fair amount of server cost. So we raised $90 million all in before the IPO, and a good chunk of that, probably 60, went into servers and building out a server farm. The other 30 went into, in these software as a service models, as you know, you have to really ramp up the sales team, and it really hurts you economically because you incur all the cost of the sales reps, and they don't really kind of generate revenue until about 6 months when they're up and running. So it takes a fairly deep investment in a SaaS business to get there. So that's what we did. Over that 15-year period, did a Series A, B, a C, and got up to a nice kind of $100 million run rate.
Yep. And was this a recurring model, predictable revenue at 100 million?
Absolutely. Yep.
Great. And so when you did sell, what was the market cap on day one? What did it pop to?
That's a good question. So I know we priced it like 14 and then went to 17. So, I would say 500 million.
Okay.
Market cap.
And taking into consideration liquidation preferences on your Series C and the cap table structure and everything else, was everyone happy with this outcome? Everyone made money?
We did, yeah. Everyone made money. It was a great outcome.
So then fast forward, how do you exit this business? This was recently, right? Well, relatively recent, 2013, so 4 years ago. How'd you get out of ChannelAdvisor, and why?
So we had another person in the business. I always kind of believe in succession planning and knowing what you're good at and not good at. And I'm a product guy. And, once you get up to a couple hundred people, just making sure little things like you're doing regular performance reviews and, you have a hiring process and you're measuring your sales team. I'm not really good at that stuff. So I brought in a COO to help me with that. And he did a great job, and it enabled me to focus on the product and marketing in areas that I felt like I could add the most value. And then after we went public, talking to the COO, got promoted to president, and he was real instrumental in the IPO process. It just felt natural. I felt like I wasn't really learning much more, and he wanted to step into the role as CEO. And I just felt like it was a great time for him to mature and take that step. And I could kick myself upstairs to exec chairman and still be involved and still be an involved founder, just not involved in the day-to-day.
So tactically, how'd you do that? Obviously, your CEO salary goes away. You write a letter to the board that says, hey, I'm going to remove myself here, so you should replace me with, and then I'm going to stay on as exec chairman?
Yeah, pretty much.
Basically, that simple?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You always kind of, I like to have my board 100% in alignment before these things kind of, come up, and just make sure it's kind of more of a after the fact thing. So, not exactly like you said, but, a lot more kind of talking to the board and sharing, my thoughts and things. And so it wasn't like they got this letter over the transom kind of thing.
You're based in North Carolina. Do people, Scott, that they probably know your story, look at you and go, Scott, you've had so much success. You're in a position where you could be, putting people on Mars. Why go after car washes?
Yeah. So I guess, I'm a big fan of Elon and Steve Jobs and those kind of folks, but I'm more of a tactical entrepreneur. I'm not the guy that's going to put people on Mars. I don't have any way of, I've had some success, but I don't have that. I think that's a billionaire kind of a problem. I just really like solving hard problems and scaling businesses rapidly. So that's what I focus on. So that's one of the things I love about Spiffy is, so first of all, every time I've made one of these career changes, it's into a totally different space. So I always love to try to challenge myself by going into something totally different. And what's fun about Spiffy is because it's consumer oriented, the demand for what we do is so high. I think we can scale this faster than I've ever scaled anything. So ChannelAdvisor took 15 years to get to 100 million. I think we can get there a lot faster at Spiffy.
And what's the ultimate goal of Spiffy? Is it take it to public, exit for, $1 billion? Do you have a goal here on this one?
I think that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. And what I always do is just try to build a business as great as it can be.
Oh, come on, Scott. But your goal at ChannelAdvisor was very clear, was to go public. Now, I know it's more sensitive because you're actually building Spiffy and your team might hear this interview. But really, you must have some goal with this. Going public is probably boring to you because you've already done it. So what possible goal could you have?
So I think if we can get this up to $100 million very quickly and into 20 or 30 markets, then we can choose our outcome. So I think there'll be legacy companies that may want to buy something like that. And I think, an IPO is another thing that we could look at. And there's an IPO is still just a fine exit and not there's some negatives, but it's still a viable exit.
Yeah. Okay. We're running out of time here. So some quick rapid fire questions. Because we didn't focus a ton on Spiffy. You had a great story, but on Spiffy. So what, break down your revenue. How much of it is pay as you go versus true SaaS revenue, recurring revenue?
Yeah, so the one thing that's really interesting at Spiffy is when we first launched, we put an MVP out there, and the biggest shock, and let me give background. After selling my second company, I had 2 physical car washes, so I have 2 tunnel car washes here in this area, and those kind of washes, it's weekends and evenings is your peak time, and during the day you do maintenance during the weekdays. So when we launched Spiffy as just an MVP app in 2014, the first thing we noticed was everyone wants their car washed while they're at work, which is obvious in hindsight because that's when your car is most idle, is those 8 hours a day when you're kind of Monday to Friday doing the 9 to 5 thing. So we're like, okay, whatever. Then as we would go to these office parks, we'd get driven off by the security folks, and they would say over and over again, there's 4 reasons we don't allow detailing. Number 1, all these detailers are kind of dodgy folks and we're not sure what their backgrounds are. Number 2, their vans look kind of fishy and we don't like them driving around our Class A office space. Number 3, they don't have insurance. And number 4, there's a big environmental concern because these detailers were leaving effectively a chemical spill in the parking lot. We solved all those things, and then what we noticed is we would be going to some of these local businesses once a week, and we started to build up this recurring revenue at the office parks. So it's kind of a long way to answer your question, but about 70% of our revenue is this at-work consumer, and the bulk of it's recurring. It's recurring at the office park level and not necessarily the consumer level. We of course do have a fair number of consumers, but there's office parks we go to where we can just consistently make $500 a week, boom, boom, and then others 1,000, and some that we make as much as 2,000. So there's this kind of training that employee base to make Spiffy a weekly habit kind of a thing. And then go ahead. And I was going to
say, give us a sense of where you're at today. So when you add up all of that, about how much are you doing per week or per month or whatever metric you want to give?
Yeah, so we just crossed the $2 million run rate, and we're growing north of 100%
year over year.
Yep.
Okay, got it. So you passed $2 million in annual recurring revenue, which means you're somewhere over $160,000 per month as of today, right?
Yep.
And what's the team size?
So the teams are interesting. So we have technicians and then the office folks. And I think this is going to be a lot like a retailer in some ways, where you have this very thin office level kind of thing that supports the city level operations. So in our office, we have about 20 folks, and I don't see it getting too much bigger than that. Not like we had to do at ChannelAdvisor. Then on the technician side, we have, between how you count them, 40 full-time and up to 60 if you include part-time folks.
Makes a lot of sense. Scott, let's wrap up here. Oh, actually, before I ask the wrap-up questions, have you raised capital on Spiffy or no, self-funded?
We have. So we just announced a round that we finished our Series A, and we raised $7.5 million.
Is that just like, it's another morning since you've done this so much, or do you still get excited?
I still get excited, and it wasn't what I would call easy either. So this is a wacky enough kind of an idea, especially with the own and operate part, that we got a lot of no's. So it's it is always a challenge.
And how do you get over the obvious question, which is, Scott, why do you need my money? Use your own money. You have enough.
Yeah, I am investing in the business, and but our aspirations are bigger than my checkbook, and so we're looking for outside investors as well.
Okay, Top Tribe, as many of you know, I sold Heyo, and everyone is always asking me what my expenses were when I was building Heyo. Well, a big expense was that I spent over $3,000 per month on financial services to keep me out of trouble in terms of taxes. My mom would always harbor me, Nathan, you gotta keep all your receipts and put them in a freaking box or something to make sure you don't get an audit or things like this. I'm like, Mom, I'm a millennial. You think I'm gonna keep all these receipts? I now use FreshBooks. I use their mobile app to take a picture of receipts, and it makes taxes a cinch. Additionally, I don't have to hire a $3,000 per month person to manage all my finances. It's like saving so much money, and my mom's happy. Additionally, I don't waste a bunch of time creating invoices. I use their templates, and I can avoid using Word templates or Excel files. I just use FreshBooks to quickly send out invoices, and it works like a charm. To get your free first month, go to nathanlatka.com/FreshBooks and enter the top in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Again, go to nathanlatka.com/FreshBooks and enter the top in the How Did You Hear About Us section. There you guys have it. All right, let's wrap up here with the famous 5, Scott. These are super quick answers. Number 1, what's your favorite business book?
The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Horowitz.
Number 2, is there a CEO that you're following or studying right now?
I'm pretty much obsessed with Jeff Bezos, not to the restraining order level, but close.
Number 3, what's your favorite online tool, like Acuity Scheduling?
This is probably controversial, but LinkedIn, that has become my brain of business network connections.
Number 4, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
Between 4 and 6.
Okay, and what's your current situation? Married, single, do you have kids?
Married, 3 kids.
Wow, okay, and how old are you now?
I am 48.
All right, take us home. Last question. Take us back 28 years. What do you wish your 20-year-old self knew?
I would tell my 20-year-old self to trust your instincts and invest even more in your own companies, because that's going to be a successful way to do things.
There you guys have it. Trust your instincts. Invest more in yourself from Scot. He's currently leading Spiffy. They launched several years ago. 70% of their revenue coming from consumer kind of recurring office park level, ranging from $500 per week up to $2,000 per week. They just passed $2 million in annual recurring revenue as a run rate, which means they're doing over $170,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Have about 20 folks on their team, plus some technicians, growing 100% year over year. Story's fascinating. Again, had a lot of success starting with his first company at Stingray at 25, which he sold at 29 for about $7 million. Got rid of a lot of personal liabilities. 1999, took advantage of the big bubble, launched AuctionRover, raised $3 million, sold in 2000 for somewhere between $20 and $50 million to Goto. Then bought it back for $1 million a year later, raised $10 million to grow that, $90 million all in, and then took it public as ChannelAdvisor in 2013, which popped to a $500 million market cap on day one. Everybody made money. Scot, fun story. Thank you for taking us to the top.
Thanks, Nathan. That's the best summary I've ever heard. I'm going to have to just play that for folks going forward.
If you enjoyed Scot today, go back and listen to yesterday's episode and jump into the big debate. Are patents entrepreneurial or totally unfair? Go listen and tell me what you think. It would mean the world to me if you guys got any value from this episode, if you would go leave a review on iTunes right now and then subscribe. I hustle like heck to get these episodes out every freaking day for you guys. And trust me, I love it. I would do it with no listeners, but boy, oh boy, it makes my day and it makes my team's day when we see great reviews and get your feedback. So thanks so much. Okay, Top Tribe, I love giving away free money. I feel like Oprah giving away cars, and I have something special for you today. How many of you have heard our super sharp guests talk about success they've had with Facebook and Google Ads? Well, all of you listening right now, yes, if you're listening, you get $100 in free AdWords. Here's how you get it. Okay, again, thanks for listening. Get the free $100 from Google right when you sign up with my website host provider, HostGator. Go sign up now to get your free money. HostGator.com/Nathan. Again, that's HostGator.com/Nathan.